You're on a journey through the Bible to experience the epic story of God and to learn your part to play in the unfolding drama. Prepare for your role as you learn your history, your enemy, and your king. Welcome to the Bible Brief. Join us today as we see Israel in the wilderness. God provides for them, but they complain as they begin to miss their old lives of slavery in Egypt. You're listening to the Bible Brief. After the 10 plagues upon the nation of Egypt, the nation of Israel hightails it out of their slavery on a journey to the Promised Land. The land promised to Abraham about 450 years prior was their destination, the land of Canaan. But hightailing it out of there with over 1 million people took some time, and they took a rather circuitous route. But this route wasn't on accident. In fact, God himself led them on their route out of Egypt. God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea, and the Israelites left the land of Egypt arrayed for battle. And the Lord went before them in a pillar of cloud to guide their way by day, and in a pillar of fire to guide them by night, so that they could travel by day or by night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place before the people. Now imagine that for a moment. Over 1 million people guided by a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire through the wilderness. They had their families, babies, and possessions in tow, and they had no idea where they were going. In some ways they were like Abraham. They had to follow God to go to a land that God would show them. Obedience to follow God was the calling upon the people. God leads the people for a few days, and they soon come to the precipice of the Red Sea. And we come to find out that Pharaoh has recently changed his mind about letting the Israelites go. He had been distraught and defeated at the death of the firstborn in Egypt, but now vengeance was on his mind. He decides to take his chariots and his charioteers to pursue the Israelites into the wilderness. And it's here at the Red Sea that Israel appears to be cut off on every side. The Egyptians have pursued them to the edge of the sea where God had led them, and there's no way that they can build enough boats to cross the body of water before they're all killed. It appears to be a no-win situation. But Moses, God's leader to the people, encourages them with these words: "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the Lord's salvation, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be silent." Soon we see one of the most magnificent events of the Hebrew Bible. Miracle stacked on miracle as God moves nature to save his people. First, we see the cloud that had been leading them through the wilderness, and this cloud moves behind the Israelites to block the advance of the Egyptian chariots. Then night falls as a great wind begins to blow across the sea. Soon, where there had been water, dry land appears, and the Israelites walk through the midst of the sea with walls of water on both sides. They cross the Red Sea on dry ground. But they're not safe yet, because soon the Egyptians pursue them into the sea. At the morning watch, however, the Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians from the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw their camp into confusion. He caused their chariot wheels to wobble so that they had difficulty driving. "Let us flee from the Israelites," said the Egyptians, "for the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea returned to its normal state. As the Egyptians were retreating, the Lord swept them into the sea. The waters flowed back and covered the chariots and the horsemen. The entire army of Pharaoh that had chased the Israelites into the sea, not one of them survived. The Egyptians would no longer pursue or oppress the Israelites. The Lord had defeated them, and the Lord saved his people without any fighting on their part. And he would continue to save his people. After all, the wilderness that Israel now finds itself in isn't a friendly place for family life for over 1 million people. The Israelites soon leave the other side of the sea and set out into the wilderness, and it's in about 3 days that they begin to get thirsty. And when they came to Marah, they couldn't drink the water because it was bitter. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, What are we to drink?" And Moses cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log. And when Moses cast it into the waters, they were sweetened. There the Lord made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he tested them, saying, "If you will listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, and pay attention to his commands, and keep all his statutes, then I will not bring on you any of the diseases I inflicted upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord who heals you." God had miraculously defeated the Egyptians, and it's after this other miraculous event with the drinking water that God gives instructions to the Israelites. This is some of the first of many instructions that are given to them as they are in the wilderness with God leading them. And here we should simply notice this. God instructed Moses to put the log in the water. Moses did so, and the water became sweet. Obedience to God's command resulted in benefit. The bitter water became sweet when God's instruction was obeyed. But God also gave a warning to the people. He says that if they don't obey, they could suffer the diseases that he had placed upon the Egyptians. Membership in the nation of Israel didn't exempt the people from pain or judgment. Rather, exemption comes when the people listen to God and do what he says. This obedience that God calls for is nothing less than an expression of faith. Notice that there was nothing about the log that made the water drinkable. No, it was simply made drinkable by the power of God. He just used the log as a way to test their faith. It turns out that faith is a critical connection in the Bible. Faith is the connection between God's command and humble obedience. Faith, even when it might seem crazy to throw a log in some water to make it drinkable. This event is followed up by more miracles, but one stands out due to its impact on the rest of the story. The people have been in the wilderness for a while now, and they soon become hungry. Hungry enough to say this to Moses: "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Hunger must have gone to their minds and mixed them up. Did they forget what God had done for them? God had literally poured out miracle after miracle to save them, and now they're complaining. Sadly, this is only the beginning of their grumbling to God. Yet despite their grumbling, God continues to show mercy to the people. The Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Each day the people are to go out and gather enough for that day, and in this way I will test whether or not they will follow my instructions. Then on the 6th day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on the other days." God says that he'll provide for the people daily, and adds this special little command that they should gather twice as much on the 6th day of the week. This is because he adds another command that they should rest on the 7th day of the week rather than gather anything. Remember way back in creation, God had done the same thing. After creating everything in 6 days, he used the 7th day to rest. God's example was made for the people so that they would rest from their work too. And in this case, God is commanding it of the Israelites. This 7th day of rest is called the Sabbath. After these commands from the Lord, the people wake up the next morning to discover something amazing. When the layer of dew had evaporated, there were thin flakes on the desert floor, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they asked one another, "What is it?" For they didn't know what it was. So Moses told them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat." Now the house of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. The people had complained about their hunger, hoping for the delicacies of Egypt. But God didn't provide what they expected. Instead, he provided something so different that they didn't even know what it was. Which is a great lesson, isn't it? God's provision often looks very different from what we expect or want, but it always proves to be better than our expectations. Instead of just plain bread, it was like wafers made with honey. And it was so different from anything they knew that they simply called it manna, meaning, what is it? Despite the grumbling and complaining of the Israelites, God provided them daily bread. Daily bread from heaven to keep them fed while on their wilderness journey. A journey drawing ever closer to a mountain previously visited by Moses, where he saw that amazing burning bush. Soon they come to Mount Sinai, where God makes an appearance that they'll never forget. Join us next time as we see the fire and smoke, we hear the thunder and the trumpets, and we sense the awe when God comes down upon Mount Sinai to make a covenant with Israel. A covenant with blessings and curses.
For Bible readings, reflection questions, and quizzes, don't miss the Bible Brief app. Available on iOS and Android, so you can go deeper into the story. The Bible Brief is a project of the Bible Literacy Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping you learn the Bible. Give to support the Bible Brief by visiting BibleBrief.org or tap the Give link in the show notes. Thank you for supporting the Bible Literacy Foundation.